I'm Sydney Johnson.
I'm Shanna Frischke.
And this is our oral argument project on Titan A.E. My part is about trying to convince you that the movie is about survival.
While mine is about the adolescent's desire to leave home.
Yeah. Enjoy! Directed by Don Bluth and Gary Goldman, Titan A.E. is a movie about a young man who holds the map to the human race's survival in his hand. Literally. I believe that in this movie, Kale's actions and decisions are made in mind of the survival of the human race, but Shannon Frischke believes that Kale's decisions are made to fulfill an adolescent desire to leave home and to be reunited with his father.
Titan A.E.'s main protagonist, Kale, could care less about the survival of others. His only desire is to leave his current, boring, anticlimactic lifestyle to find his lost father, which contradicts Sydney Johnson's viewpoint that this movie is about survival as a whole and not Kale's adolescent's desire to leave his vapid lifestyle.
At the time when he agrees to help the crew of the Valkyrie find the Titan and save the human race, it's because of selfish reasons, including how much money he could make in the process and not wanting to be killed by the Dredge when they attack him in the cafeteria on Tau 14. In the early parts of the movie, after the introduction of the Titan, we are shown how Kale lived his life in the years after the destruction of Earth. He was clearly unhappy with his life and what it had become, so when an opportunity to leave came along, he jumped on it. Also, throughout the movie, Kale reminisces about his father and wonders why he hasn't made contact with him since he promised him when they were about, to leave the planet. When they were about to leave the planet. Granted, Shannon does have a good case about Kale's motives for agreeing to find the Titan and help save the human race, but as the movie progresses and Kale meets more and more humans, he realizes that they are a race worth saving. Yes, Kale had selfish anterior motives in the beginning. Despite this, as the movie grew and developed, so did he.
Admittedly, this creates a good argument due to the fact that Kale does end up saving the human species at the close of the movie. However, Kale had not begun his mission with such in mind. During the first few scenes, he joins up with a small group with a ship named the Valkyrie, who want to stop the opposing forces, the Dredge, and save what is left of the human race. And although this does benefit my opponent's claim, Kale does not wish to save the race, but rather this is his only opportunity to get far away from his responsibilities and possibly find out what happened to his long-lost father. Kale's adolescent desire to leave home and explore space greatly affected his actions during the course of the movie. Everything he does is to better his situation and create a new life for himself while finding out more about his old one. Although he inadvertently saves the race, Kale completes these tasks with himself and his aspirations in mind, and helps establish the idea of his want to leave home and explore the vast emptiness of space for a better life.
Titan A.E. is a movie about the survival of the human race and how Kale makes it so. In the beginning, he talks to the captain of the Valkyrie, Corso, who is also human and even knew Kale's father. Kale tells Corso that the humanity has had a good run, and Corso comes back with this response. It's not about a good run, it's about survival. From this point on, Kale begins to realize that he is important to someone other than himself, and that other humans need him. But what does it mean to survive? FreeDictionary.com defines it as to carry on despite hardships or trauma. I definitely think the human race has managed to live since the Dredge destroyed Earth, but how much longer could they survive?
Kale could care less about others. His sarcastic and cynical personality helped create a character who's not fit about anything or anyone but himself and his ambitions. He explains to Corso, the captain of the Valkyrie, when he states, "If I don't like the way things are going, I'll leave," expanding upon the idea that his selfish attitude and lack of regard for others' safety makes him an anti-hero. He does not want any part of the mission he placed himself into, but greatly appreciated the fact that his life is no longer miserable and insipid. Kale articulates many times at the beginning of the movie that he wishes to leave his current state of residence on the salvage station Tau 14, where he lives a hard life full of work and being bullied by other spacefaring aliens to find someplace new. He refers to it as a boring dump, which helps tie in the idea of leaving for the unknown to better his own life rather than those around him.
As Kale progresses through the movie, he has become more and more dedicated to saving the human race, and less about wanting to find his father, or just wanting to save himself. His dedication is really put to the test when he and Akima, the pilot of the Valkyrie and love interest, overhear Corso talking to the Dredge Queen about his true plans for when they find the Titan. He and Akima are put in a tight spot and end up in a fight with Corso. He then proceeds to tell Kale that his father was killed by the Dredge, and about how he couldn't realize the truth. that the human race is out of gas. It's circling down the drain. It's finished. The only thing that matters is grabbing what you can before somebody else beats you to it. The statement is interesting because it is similar to what Kale said in the beginning parts of the movie. First to Corso, that there is no coming back from having your home planet destroyed. Then to Akima, asking if there would be anything on the Titan that would be worth selling or trading. He also questions their motives by saying, "What, we're going to risk our necks to help a bunch of Drifter Colony bums?" Kale had no respect or even cared about what happened to humanity at that point. But by the time he has this confrontation with Corso, Corson used Kale's own argumentative points against him, and Kale realized how wrong he was and comes back saying, "No, I don't believe that." So even though he hears that his father was killed and his own opinions were thrown back at him, he's still dedicated to saving the human race.
As a hero. The dictionary states it simply as someone who takes risks, but in most cases in literature, not just science fiction, this definition is very broad. When Kale is called a hero in Titan A.E, he cringes. He doesn't care about glory or fame, and can't imagine risking his neck for a bunch of Drifter Colony bums, concluding that his only thoughts are about what benefit himself and the longing to leave his stale way of living and not about saving people he doesn't have any connections or similarities with besides their genetic makeup.
Kale had been determined to finding the Titan and saving the human race for a while now, but seeing his own kind in a community setting drives him even further. After Akima is wounded in the fight with Corso, they are able to escape into the Drifter Colony of New Bangkok, where he is greeted and helped by a colony of humans. They don't say much about Kale's previous encounters with his own kind, but this one was special. He saw how much they cared for Akima even though they had never met her. Also how they were able to work together and that they didn't want anything in return. Kale also met a woman and her little brother who was full of energy, kicking around a soccer ball and pretending to run around in a grass field. She told him that, here on the colony, most people gotta shut their eyes to see anything other than rusted spaceship hulls. That moment really touched Kale and made him realize that the human race doesn't belong on rusted spaceship hulls, but that they need a home. In Titan A.E, Kale is the only one who could have found the Titan, an Earth ship that we later find out has the ability to create a new planet for the human race to live on and survive. Throughout the movie, Kale risks life and limb to find the Titan and to be able to save the human race. He wasn't always so dedicated to the cause, but he has realized that they are a race worth saving. First, it was from Corso, and then from Akima, and then finally he saw for himself when they went to the Drifter Colony of New Bangkok, that humanity is a race worth fighting and dying for. The way Kale grows in the movie is very unique to him. There are many personal struggles that he faces, as well as having to accept the fact that he's never going to see his father again.
In addition, a large part of his longing to leave home was his secret desire to find his father, who had left him in his toddler years to try to save the race. He hated his father for disappearing on him all those years ago, but he couldn't help but want to see him once more to possibly get an explanation as to why he left. He had to try to find him, and the offer to join with the Valkyrie was just what he needed.
Okay, go.
Titan A.E's